all we did was gather information from the City of Boston website. But we wanted to compile it in a document that's intergenerational with the QR codes and also the refrigerator stickers you could just put on your refrigerators, like for election days coming, and then where to take out your trash. These different city services are very important as we vote for local issues. Like next year is a city council race and the mayoral race. Okay, so let's prepare, even if you're not really happy with the candidates, and this is what I tell people, and some folks may disagree, make sure you go cast your ballot, because you can go and write a name in. Like, for instance, if I wanted to write in Pastor Hobbs' name or Falasha's name, I can do that. A lot of people, just make sure, because resources are allocated according to the numbers of votes. So I just want people to understand that.
And when you say resources are allocated, meaning?
Money. For instance, like these were years ago. I don't know how current this statistic is. Everybody that fills out a census form, it used to be $1,000 goes to that city or town. Like, for instance, and people don't understand this, if you are in prison, reentry, for instance, you become a resident of that prison, wherever that may be located, whether it's in Walpole or what other city or town, and that money goes to that city or town because of the individual. That's why it's important for people to fill out the census. Because they send you information in the mail, fill that out, because what tends to happen is that they take you off the voting list if it's not active. Many times they do that because the election departments are overwhelmed. Then you got all this Chad Dimple's unreliable polls and all this cheating and all kind of stuff going on. And so they've overwhelmed with work anyway. So please go out and vote. Make sure you can get one of these. We have them here at Boston Black News, Boston Praise Radio and TV. Make sure you get a copy. They are free of charge. All we ask is you fill out an information card so that we can remind you to go out and vote and keep up.
Where else can they get them? I mean, I encourage them
the Family Nurturing Center on 200 Bowden Street. We have them in various churches.
Okay.
And so
can they go to?
They can go to the website. Thank you. www.dunkthevoteforever.org. And you have a digital version that they can get. And I'm hot in here.
All right.
Y'all aren't hot?
Yeah, but we're used to it.
Y'all used to it.
Yeah.
I ain't been in it.
Okay, that's good information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Dunk the Vote actually is the entity that actually compiled these guides.
Yes.
Congrats.
Yeah,
Good work.
thank you so much. We're in our 32nd year. We've visited over 100,000 people across the state of Massachusetts. We're really proud of the work. But now it's so important that we go out and turn out them numbers.
Let me ask you, so I'm curious, how can I get these, or we, our coalition, get these in quantity to be able to distribute them to people who are behind the wall?
I can give you a whole box because you're Pastor Hobbs and I know you do the work. What I don't want people to get these and don't use them as coffee mugs and, pick the teeth with it and all. No, that ain't for this. This costs too much money. This is good quality, right?
Yeah.
So
and I'm going to give you another one, because potentially, right, we can put it actually on their tablets, because they have tablets, right? That way it's something that they have, and it's because there's some things that they'll clear to be on their tablets that they don't have to actually have the physical thing. Is that something that we could potentially explore?
You can go right to the website and that's right there.
Okay.
Or I can even send folks that are interested the link.
Okay.
And the link will have the whole document in a digital form.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. Beautiful.
So it's like a PDF.
Correct.
Wonderful. Okay. Perfect.
So I was beginning to talk about our interview this morning. We had Greg Simpson here. He talked about his life as a City of Boston basketball player, and it went sour when he started using cocaine, and now he's out helping other young people. I don't know if you guys had a chance to listen into the broadcast, but what do you think about what happened?
I didn't get to hear. I was back there setting up.
I heard a portion of it, but in any event, what I did hear about it, I mean, it's a reality, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that, I mean, by the grace of God, he didn't OD that particular night, right? Because that with that amount of money, but it also speaks to the fact that money is simply an amplifier of whoever you already are, right? So people think money, but so you can have all this talent, right? And you get all this money, but if we're not working on our character, right? And if we're not working on our issues that underlie our behavior, right? Then it's just short-lived. Right, so we here at Boston Praise, we know this is something that we're biblically grounded and so forth, and we are all believers in this space, right? And not that makes everything perfect, because it rains on the just as well as the unjust, but we all have trauma, right? We all have issues, and we have to address those issues and not just medicate those issues, because ultimately it's just going to lift us up and slam us down.
Right. Well, one of the takeaways for me was the fact that, because when I looked at it the first time on Instagram, and I said, I know this brother.
Yep.
And he was a legend in high school.
Sure.
I mean, one of the best point guards that played the game in Boston. I mean, he's one of Boston's best, and so many folks put him on a pedestal.
Sure.
And all that limelight and all that popularity, notoriety, and so forth. And then all of a sudden, a choice he made because of a coach who promised him to go to Northeastern, that he would be a starting point guard. Now he's already all scholastic. Everyone, he played in the Boston Shootouts, which is the best basketball players that are from the state. And that disappointment, and then to have a child at a young age, that was another obstacle for him. And then he starts to use crack cocaine, and he goes and he parties and gives the money away. He sniffs and smokes it all up, and he goes on this rampage of robbing Christie's markets. People didn't know that story. And it's a sad story. And just listening to him, it was, my heart was torn, because I knew this brother growing up, and he was a good guy. Like, there wasn't no drugs and all that. City kid, you may have used or whatever, but it wasn't like a dope fiend or a drug addict or someone that you would expect to go down that road.
Ron, when he was living this life, did you know that he was
I was in college.
rails?
Yeah, I was in college. I didn't hang out with him because I went to Philly.
Okay.
And when I came back, I played on his team, and then all of a sudden, I was working at a young age at Roxbury Tinsley Harvard, so it was on a different side of town. But I heard about it in the papers, about the robberies, and I didn't know about him being drafted or getting an invite to the camp, Philadelphia 76ers, and they gave him $60,000 cash, and he spent it all
On what?
on crack. Yeah, and so that was hurtful. Another takeaway for me is, like, you never know what people are dealing with.
Never.
Because he talked about living that double life, hanging out, but yet going to college, but not being in college, being there, but not being present. And so it was really, like, when I read that, I said, I gotta let him come on the broadcast, because there's somebody out there may need this to hear this story.
Did he know that you were going to open this all up?
Oh, yeah. Because I asked him, I said, do you want me to ask you certain questions or not to? He said, Ron, you can ask me anything. I said, you sure? Okay. Because once you put it out there, it's out there.
So is he working for an organization now to help?
I don't know
prevent this?
I know he does a lot of volunteer work, but I believe he works for the state now. I believe he does that. Well, he definitely works for the state, because he took today off, and I wanted to make that clear on the air, because he used a vacation day, because, you can't do the interviews and stuff on city and state time if you're an employee of the state of Massachusetts or the city. But it amazed me that he had all these accolades and accomplishments and opportunities that went down the drain.
What amazed me was the number of people from our church that were on the different platforms. They were not all on the same platforms. That's what I was doing when you were telling me the phone's ringing. I had to stay on. I got two computers, and they were overjoyed. They were overjoyed to hear the truth coming out from him.
And a testimony.
The way that he did it, yeah.
Yeah, because even as I mentioned to you earlier, because at first I was like, I wanted him to be in a space where he felt comfortable, because that's a hard thing to do, to tell your faults publicly and some of the things you've been through. And for him to open up like that, I was like, wow. And so he felt that, because he said, I know we can't swear on the air 'cause I get a little passionate
Well,
sometimes.
he was getting teary eyed.
He was getting teary-eyed.
Yeah.
And so I, he said one word. I don't know if you picked up on
I
it.
did pick it up.
No, you did.
I
Don't
I
say
don't know
it.
if you saw it. I pressed the button.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Because I was like, I was trying, because he was really into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I interview people, I try to make them feel as if they're in
Right.
my living room.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because there was one brother who was running for office, he said, "Mother," I was like, "Bruh, you're on the air," So anyway, and I think that's what's good about really folks telling this story. It's so important, because that story, as Reverend Chris Sumner, Pastor Chris Sumner, mentioned, that we always highlight black men as being basketball players or rappers, or we need to show the philanthropic side, the patriarch side, and the humanity side as we celebrate Father's Day weekend. And I want to give a shout out to all the fathers that are being fathers and father figures that are out there, because fathers are important. There is a attack on black men. I remember years ago, there was a story by the Boston Magazine. On the front page, they said, I believe it was a Boston Magazine. It was one of the magazines. Let me get it right. They said, the black male, the endangered species. Simmer on that for a while.
So Falasha has a broadcast coming up on Sunday.
Yes.
And she's inviting fathers to be her guests. Why?
So there's this idea that, like you just said, black men are either basketball players, rappers, or very bad people, right? They're not dads, they're not present, they're not around. And that's not true. That's not necessarily the truth. And this show will prove that, right? It'll prove the point that black men are dads, and they are present, and they are very present. And yesterday we had Minister Priscilla had a guest who said that it was her calling or her responsibility to ensure that that negative connotation around black men is removed. It's not true. There's absentee fathers in every race, every community, and not just black men. So let's not make it a black man thing, right? It's just that dad is not around, or for whatever reason. And sometimes, and sorry ladies, sometimes it's our fault.
Okay, now hearing you talk about what you're going to do is going to make me want to run the other way, because you're actually going real deep into this with these fathers that are coming out.
Yeah, because my dad wasn't, his mother raised me, his mother and father raised me in Jamaica, but he was here in America, and he wasn't really involved in my life anyway. And that showed up in my life in some of my decisions with the men that I dated and the relationships that I stayed in. And I want to hear, and I have questions. They can't answer for my dad, but I also have friends, women who, similar to me, their fathers weren't around, or for whatever reason, and so we kind of identify with some of the same stuff. And I want to hear from a man's perspective, because I know it's not always, I just don't want to be a part of this child's life. Sometimes it's more, I've probably been emasculated, and on top of emasculation, I don't know how, right? And the environment isn't supportive for me to do that. So I think this is an opportunity for everyone from every walk of life, the dads that have 5 baby mamas, the ones that are married to their wives, the ones who had a couple kids over here, a couple kids over there, and they're now with one woman who has some kids too with them, or not, and they just are co-parenting and blended families. And I want to hear it all. And I think not just me, I believe other people, men and women out there, want to hear it all and want to understand. And I've never really been privy to a show or a broadcast or any information that allows a space where men, primarily men of God, get to come together and say, this is what it's like. This is what's happening. This is how I'm experiencing it. And this is how God being in my life has transformed my role as a father. Those conversations need to be had. And
Tell us the day and the time so people.
So the day is Father's Day, which is Sunday, June 16th, and it's at 3 p.m., 3 to 4 p.m.
And my wife has volunteered my time to be a part of this exciting.
That's good.
That's good?
Yeah, it's really good. No,
you see the level of intensity that program is going to be like?
I'm not going to say anything right now, but I had a joke, but I'm not going to say it.
No, okay.
Go ahead, say it. I want the joke.
No, I ain't going to say it.
Okay.
Because this is my first day back,
Okay.
but I do want to say it.
Tell her about the broadcast that we used to have.
We used to have a broadcast called the Morning Crew, and we would just it was during the pandemic. That's when Boston Black News was birthed, Pastor Wall, and we would just go and tell jokes, and he would talk about me, and so he got me so upset one day. I started talking about him riding the little bus. You know the little bus? You know the little bus? You know that bus? And then he limps to it. So we started telling jokes. And so and folks needed that because we're in a pandemic and we just wanted folks to laugh.
Right. We did news right after that.
We did news right after that. But it was just, it was also a relief for me because I got a chance to really jab him and like really go at him, and he got me back. And I used to prepare for it. I used to prepare my joke.
Were you proud of this, Pastor
I
House?
was not.
No, he was like, and then actually, Detective Larry Ellison, he sat in a couple of them. But it was really a good broadcast.
He could throw some zingers.
Oh no, he's just because you know, being a police
Yeah,
officer,
he probably is quick.
And I'm looking at him like this
Right.
anyway.
We didn't say anything back to
We didn't
him
say that
because he had the handcuffs.
thing. No, not only hair, because he had that thing sticking out of his.
You have a call. We have a
I like
call.
don't let the, okay. Calling you live on Boston Black News.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
All right, my man, how you doing, brother?
All right. So this is Brother Jamal. I was listening earlier, and it was actually good to hear because, you know, all these years, I really thought, my brother, that you was delusional. Because I've never heard anybody say that you were good at basketball except for you.
Thanks, Jamal.
So there you go.
Yeah,
So we're on the morning crew. Okay, welcome back. You couldn't wait for that. I know you've been waiting for me to come back. You probably got a whole list.
Oh,
of
yeah.
Go ahead.
I got a list. I do a spreadsheet.
Okay. All right. How you doing, man?
But everything's beautiful, man. But seriously, though, on the tip of fatherhood and everything like this, and, you know, just black men in general and, you know, black manhood or leadership, whatever we want to call it. One thing that has been heavy on my heart lately is, you know how, like, some people say, oh, you know, well, first of all, they like to put God in it. God called me to do this. God told me to run for governor. Or, you know, God told me to do this or that. And I don't know what God they're talking to, or, you know, what I don't know. I can't speak on that. But what I find oftentimes is sometimes we really need to be more careful about the examples that we have. Like we have in our community, for instance, some people, like, let's say, that might be doing programs, you know, for young men, or like programs for kids who shouldn't be around kids.
Right.
In my view.
Right.
You know what I mean? In my view. Or do not have the best examples of manhood or whatever. And when I'm talking about manhood, I'm talking about basic stuff. I'm talking about, you know, integrity, character, principles, morals, you know, that type of thing. So I would just really like for us to, as a community, hone down more on the role of a father, whether it's the, you know, the biblical or the secular, but just really hone into some of these definitions, like what makes a father a good father, what makes a man a good, you know, a good man, and all of these type of things. Because I think, I don't know, in our community, I just see a lot of confusion. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Jamal. Anyone want to respond?
I would say what makes a good father a father is the fruit that he bears. Like what are you putting in your children, right? How are your children showing up as a representation of you? Because we're gonna, for example, being raised by my grandparents. My grandfather was an amazing dad for me. And I did what I did out there, and I had my journey, which was completely separate from parenting, right? God had a plan and has a plan for my life. So I had to go through and experience some of the things that I did, most of everything that I did, to be able to live to talk about it. But what was instilled in me, right, as from my parents, was integrity, was my heavy reliance upon the Lord. And when it gets rough, I know where to go back to, right? And I know whose I am. And I know, yes, my grandparents loved me, but they could never love me the way God loves me. And they made sure that I knew that, right? So even though it took me a while to spin the block, I'm back, and God, you know what I mean? So I think you recognize that by the fruit of that you bear as parents, because I'm a parent, and as my children are growing and learning, I can still see their character. So yeah, they'll make some mistakes, but their character, who they are, in like the integrity, the way that my son is willing to tie his sister's shoelace for her, or the way that my daughter is willing to help another sister in the supermarket whose child is being a little rambunctious or whatever, or giving her that smile to say, it's okay, don't worry, we all do that. You know what I mean? Those characteristics are how you know that you've when you're a good dad or a good mom or a good parent. Is how that to me is how you would know. Not so much did you provide, did you pay the bills, did you do those things are important, yes, but I think that's the narrative that has been pushed on us to measure whether or not the dad is a good dad, and that's not fair, because we're coming from in this society, we're coming from a deficit. And if we're going to be honest, let's be honest and say that the system is more is more geared towards women, right? So it's easier for a woman to get certain things done than a man would, right? And that's just the way it is. And so, I could go on, and I don't want to, but that's just where I think it's the fruit that your children are your fruit, right? They show, just like us, we're God's children. And how do we show up in society?
One of the things that I had to deal with, and that I still deal with, is when my children make a mistake, I try not to run away from them. And I say to Karen, thank God that we're the parents of these children. God has given us these children for a reason. He saw something in us to sort of carry them to wherever they needed to go. And if they had the wrong parents could make their mistakes even worse. And so Karen and I have tried to embrace that thinking, because our children have made mistakes.
And they will. And they're not mistakes. They're just learning, they're opportunities for learning, right? Because those mistakes get corrected. Right. Because you make that mistake and you know you can't do it again. You won't do it again. And if you do it again, it continues.
And not for nothing, too, Pastor Wall, you bring up a good point with that, because, too, I believe it's incumbent upon us as parents. It's like this is the best job we could ever have, right? So you should always be constantly trying to improve at your job, right? Right. Now, you and your wife have kind of a cheat code because of some of your professional skills that you already possessed, that then I think we're going to automatically make you better parents, right? Your wife is a social worker, and you know what I mean, and she understands psychology and these type of things, right? So that skill set, I think, is going to automatically make somebody a better parent. Your experience in the courts and as a youth minister and all this, I think, is automatically going to translate well in the son. Now, let me use this on smaller things. Just as a parent, right? How could I imbibe in my child a strong love for reading if I don't read? Right. How could I teach my daughter how to cook if I can't cook? Right. Or iron, or do the laundry, or rake or mow a lawn, or change a tire? So, as parents, I think it is also incumbent upon us to have a good skill set to actually pass on to these kids. Right. Right? Because there's a lot of people out there that they don't know how to do none of them things I just listed.
Right. I want to speak on the issue around, some of the folks that are running these programs. out here, and some of these folks that you had alluded to, Jamal, that don't really represent manhood, which and fatherhood, and I think that, you know, I go back to my experience running missionary community centers, that I made sure I did Corey checks. I made sure that the person had good references, and I also looked at their lifestyle as it relates to working for me. One of the rules that I really enforced was that you don't be in a closed door room with a young person, and particularly if you're of a different gender. That was one of the major things. Or nowadays you have to even make sure, even if it's the same gender, keep the door open.
I'm gonna say that don't matter no more. That
there
shit
you go.
been sailed.
Well, it never did. We just are now realizing.
We're realizing
that
it,
but
right?
It never mattered. It should have never mattered.
Right, and I think that's very important, because we have to realize, although we may be doing our jobs as parents, our children will make mistakes, or as you mentioned, we have some challenges growing up, but there are other outside forces that will affect them, because sometimes your child may go off to the left and you're like, where did that come from? And, you know, and that speaks to the lack of services that are out here, the lack of people that are running these services, and their character and their morals and values that may not be up to par. So I think that this is not just a one family issue. I remember when I was growing up, it's like you got in trouble. Not only did your neighbor whoop your behind, they would tell your father or mother that, you know, this one messed up. It was a neighborhood. But now we don't even have neighborhoods. We have hoods, because the neighbors are gone. Everybody's, you know, you don't even know who lives around you these days.
Right.
So I think that it's a community. Go ahead.
And think about the level of exposure now. I mean, you know, Ron, when I was a kid, and, you know, obviously y'all a little bit older than me, but, you know, when I was a kid, the biggest action we got for, you know, little Sony time as a young boy was the Sears catalog or National Geographic.
Right.
Right? But now these kids, you can come across sexual images by accident now.
Right on the phone.
Just clicking on the wrong thing or what have you, and then let alone what is supposed to be just not even, you know, quote unquote pornographic, but just the mainstream is almost pornographic now. Not even almost, but I mean, you can't even like
even the soap operas.
or you know, who's your kid's favorite, you know, musician or whatever, a rapper or whatever. It is just devolved to such a level that, once again, for parents, we have to be able to do a better job of showing our kid a balance, because our kid is going to get exposed to this craziness.
Yeah.
So our kid needs to be able to have enough balance to understand, oh, yeah, that is crazy, rather than, oh, yeah, that's cool.
Right.
You know what I mean? Our kids need to be able to understand what is actually good for their age. Everybody grew up liking McDonald's, but we understand now you're not going to eat McDonald's every day, 3 meals.
Right.
Jamal, and those of you in the studio, I just received a phone call from a person who said, and I want to ask you if you've heard this before, that the Pew Research said that black men spend more quality time with their children than any group. Have you heard that before?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
Yeah, I did see. Yeah,
Well, I don't only have heard it; I've seen it. As I mentioned earlier about going to some of these football games and these basketball games, and you see black men. Black men. I mean, it's like, wow. And it wasn't like that for me. I mean, when I grew up, my father worked 2 full-time jobs, so I didn't really see him until, or get to know him until when I became older, coming from college. I mean, that's it. Go ahead.
Trends changed.
Right.
So, for instance, 70s and all this type of thing, 60s, 70s, you know, and after the Vietnam War and whatnot, you know, a lot of the families broke up, the beginning of welfare, women, infant, and children, ain't no men in that equation. So you had the drug addiction, you had all of this stuff. Then you also had Superfly and the Mac, you know, with programming folks into this pimp mentality. So that took a major blow on the black family. But we rebounded. Because then I would say in the hip-hop generation, remember one of the most popular songs, right, from our brother right here in Boston, Be a Father to Your Child.
Right.
Because then all of a sudden it got cool to be a dad.
Right.
And then people were looking at the other folks like, man, you ain't taking care of your kids? And it actually became cool. And now, I mean, when I wake up every morning, I look out my window, the dads I see with their kids on their shoulders, walking them up and down to the bus stops and this and that. So, yeah, the myth of the black father, the deadbeat dad thing, I think has long been smashed. I'm glad that they did the actual research and the data to actually prove it because, you know, without that data, we would have still been talking about a unicorn.
Wow. Jamal, let me ask you a question off of the topic. How did you know that we were on today?
There was a flyer on Facebook with a guy with a really large
Don't you
head.
stop. Don't you stop. You know what? You know what?
It looked like a basketball, and I knew the subject was going to be something about basketball.
Okay.
Listen, don't start that, 'cause
Okay.
I'm not good at jokes, and if I'm going to be in here,
No,
I'm not.
you know what,
Don't start,
Jamal? I love you,
Sorry,
brother.
but I know you're a woman of God. We're not making fun of Ron.
No, that's
God
fine.
made his
No,
head
you can
like
make
that.
fun
It's
of him.
okay.
That's fine.
Jamal, everybody who comes in and they're a part of our team are very conservative and very cool people, and after they're in the atmosphere for the while, they join in. The only holdout is Pastor Hobbs is still trying to hold out and say, I'm not joining that. I'm not joining that. So again, this has been interesting. We have 5 more minutes. I can't believe that, and
That's
we've
it?
got to go. Any summary comments about today's broadcast?
I think it's been really good to be back. I mean, it's refreshing. I was talking to Dr. Carolyn Crockett at an event yesterday, and she was complimenting how we interview, how we create an atmosphere, and folks feel comfortable when they
We've got to get her back
Yeah,
into the studio.
we definitely will.
There is nothing like this in Boston. That's a fact.
Thank you. Thank
You know, and yeah, we can have fun, but we discuss serious stuff,
serious
spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it can go anywhere, and literally, there is nothing like this in Boston. And I'm not going to just say black radio. I'm going to say all radio
All
because
radio.
the major radio stations are not having this level of engagement either.
No, they don't know how to. It's gone. It's. I think people don't realize social media is great and it's wonderful and it serves its purpose, but at the core of it, we're all still people. And at the core of people are relationships and community. I'm sorry. So, yes, social media, you get to scroll because it's convenient.
Right.
But this is what it's really about as humans. This is why God gave Adam Eve, right? Because you need a companion. And within that companion, you need friendships, you need a relationship, you need time together to connect in a physical way so that we can kind of glean off of each other. And so, yeah, this is always going to be the best because, I mean, we have number one over there, past the wall, and then, you know, number one in training over here, me, Falasha.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Let's talk about engineer.
No, that's we ain't talking about the broadcast. I'm the broadcast anchor. I'm the broadcast anchor here. You know. And on that fly with my big head, what I said in the fly was live in studio.
Yep.
That makes a big difference.
Big difference.
Because, you know, you can have your little social media platforms, and it's nothing like being in a space owned by a black church.
Amen.
Run by a black pastor.
Amen.
Run by a man of God. Run by good people.
Amen.
Black people. So when we spread the news throughout this city, throughout this country, throughout the world, we're setting an example because we become an unrelational society. So I encourage you to tune in next Friday, and we have some other broadcasts, actually Sunday,
3 p.m.
3 p.m.
We're going to Faith Beyond Boundaries, and we're going to be talking to dads on Father's Day.
And Falasha's broadcast is on twice a month, correct?
Yes,
Twice
every
a month.
first and third Sunday.
Right. And
Great.
she's also joining our news team that we're developing.
Okay, and Pastor Hobbs, I see you on all the time now. What's your time?
My broadcast schedule is Tuesday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., Sunday, 7 to 9.
Great. And Pastor Wall?
I'm trying to find my time.
He's trying to figure it
I'm
out.
trying to figure it out, yeah.
'Cause
I'm working on it.
Okay, and what about Priscilla? What's her broadcast on Thursday?
She's Thursday. She's at 9 o'clock, 9
Yeah.
a.m. in the morning.
So this is good.
Let me know too graphically if you want me to help you whip up a new schedule.
Thank you.
You know, make a flyer of the new schedule so
Thank
you can
you.
start promoting that so everybody knows who's when and where.
That's
Thanks.
a great idea, Jamal.
Yeah,
And
thanks, Jamal.
Yeah, that'd be great. And also our broadcaster Jamal Crawford, our analyst and critiquer.
He's a part of the team
Of course.
because he calls in.
Especially when I'm here,
Oh Lord.
so we can talk about.
Yeah,
that.
you, Ma'am Leo,
Ma'am Leo.
Priscilla.
Yeah.
Hey, not for nothing too. I was just thinking about y'all the other day because I saw it, but you know, once again, R.I.P. to Pastor Stephen Davis. You know, because now the 3 young men is now down to 2.
2, yeah.
Wow.
But you know, so yeah, no, I definitely tune in for sure.
That's
Thanks-
great, man.
thank
We
you.
really appreciate you, brother. And again, I want to just remind people, September 3rd is the election. Make sure you go out and cast your ballot. You can start early voting as early as August 26th. So make sure you get your mail-in voting. You have many ways to vote. There are local elections, state elections. Go out and cast your ballot. Final words?
Get out and vote.
Great to be here. Welcome
Heal
back.
our land.
Amen.
Dunk the vote.
Dunk the vote. Get Trump out.
Remember, the Voting Rights Act is up for reauthorization in 2007. Now it's time for us to take action. UC2, UConn. The pandemic.